Hello and welcome back to the semifinals of the World Championship in Through the Ages. Today we are taking a look at Group 3 of the semifinals again and at the third game of that group, and that will be the second one of the four-player games. And yeah, for HC Squared and Wolves, it could already be quite an important game now to maybe yeah, catch up to Kishantri and Dots, while for Kishantri and Dots, it's a really nice opportunity to keep some of the players on distance. So it will be interesting to see how that game will end. As always, I don't know how the game will be going. And now, without further ado, let's take a look at the game. And first of all, as always, we are going to take a look at the leaders and wonders. And we can see here some theater synergy with Chaplin, Marlene Dietrich, and the Hollywood. Also Bach being H2, as well as Shakespeare, and also Darwin as another culture leader. We have also the internet together with Pierre and Sid Meier. There are Sid Meier, Steve Jobs, and Bill Gates for some lab synergy. Also Manhattan Project is there, but no spaceflight. We have Gandhi and the Manhattan Project for the military, and also the Red Cross is there. In H2 we have Ocean Liner plus Maria Theresa, some culture leaders as said. We have Nobel but no Newton. We have James Cook but no Suez Canal. One military action leader with Catherine, two military action leaders in H1 with Jan Žižka and Joan of Arc, Nostradamus and Barbarossa to help with the strength, Gutenberg but no Leonardo, Michelangelo, maybe together with the Machu Picchu, and then Isabella. Also both of the strength wonders, Himeji Castle and Great Wall, Silk Road but no Universitas. And yeah, Wolves is playing in first position in this game, and he starts by taking Confucius, which seems like the best pick here. HC Squared will then go for Hippocrates and the Urban Growth. That also is a very solid pick. Dots, will he just grab one of those for 3? He will go for Boudica. Boudica, I think, a very strong leader in 4-player games, so that makes sense, just grabbing her. And Kishantri will go for Cleopatra with the Hanging Gardens. Yeah, those two can work quite nicely together, especially if he maybe gets something like a rich land at his next turn that he can take for free. And there's a rich land coming down the row. Let's see if we will be able to get that one at his turn. Wolves goes for Confucius, builds a mine, increases his population, takes this copy of Richland. Could have also taken a Frugality, which I maybe would have preferred because it just generates some value for certain. But maybe he had some card row reasoning here. I'm not sure if there was anything specific, but that of course can also play a part, or he just wanted to have the resource available here. HC Squared builds the second lab with the urban growth, gets some science production started first, elects Hippocrates and then takes the Frugality. And with him also having now taken a card from the discard spot, the Colosseum will stay on 2 civil actions for Dots. Maybe that was the reasoning, with potentially foreseeing that now Dots not having a civil action available for once, Wonder available for 1 civil action. He will now take that Richland away. That would have been a very nice card to take for Kishantri. Maybe he can now take the stockpile and do something similar, being able to build a step every turn while not delaying his third mine. He will go for Cleopatra, builds the second lab, increases his population, and indeed will grab the stockpile. There's also an early copy of Monarchy in Iron coming down the row. Let's see if we will again see an Iron grab for 3, as we have seen it so often recently. Wolves seeds, opens the development of settlement, and indeed, he will grab the iron for 3. He has the rich land in hand, and yeah, he has additional science from Confucius, can start investing into it immediately. He has 1 civil action left. Let's see if he will commit to one of those wonders, or now that he has something to invest into, maybe will go for an H1 wonder directly. And yeah, of course, he can also build the second lab. I didn't see that he had a free population, but of course the development of settlement was revealed, so he gets the science production going, doesn't commit to a wonder yet, can maybe still go for the Colossus at the next turn. HC Squared seeds, and the development of markets is revealed. He will take some additional resources, goes for the Colosseum, the engineering genius, builds a mine, builds a step of the Colosseum being a perfectly solid wonder in 4-player games. Now it's Dot's turn. He will build the second lab, takes the Acropolis over the Colossus, but there's also no Suez Canal in the game, and also he can take the Acropolis together with the Monarchy, guaranteeing that he can get some value quickly out of it. Kushantri tries offering the trade routes agreement. Being able to use food as resources would be nice for him, especially with the development of settlement being revealed and the additional food and happy face from the Hanging Gardens, but because of that the pact gets rejected by HC squared. Kushantri will build a mine thanks to the development of markets. He doesn't even have to play the stockpile in order to be able to build the third mine while also building the first step of the Hanging Gardens. He will then take the swordsman and getting a military tech for one civil action. Seems good, and then also a rich land. The second copy of Iron is also coming down the road at this point. Wolf's Seeds opens the development of warfare, can take the development but has to increase his population now this turn. Thanks to the rich land, he can now go for an additional upgrade, so that rich land is certainly paying off very quickly. And then, yeah, this turn just was very straightforward, I guess, going for those two upgrades, increasing his population to not have an uprising. HC squared can also take the free warrior, increases his population, takes the second copy of Iron now, and also the drama. Dots Seeds and opens the development of politics, everyone gets some additional draws. He also takes the free warrior, with that he can decide freely what he wants to take from Boudica, scores a science, builds the first step of the Acropolis, and interestingly is willing to grab Nostradamus here for 2 civil actions. Certainly a strong leader. Yeah, but maybe finishing the Acropolis and potentially even taking Barbarossa could also be interesting. But he has a third military action soon. Nostradamus can maybe from next turn on potentially give him perfect knowledge about the event deck after. He will be prepared for the event deck, and with the third military action from the monarchy will have a solid chance at getting enough event draws. Kushantri Seeds and opens the development of trade routes. He will now go for Barbarossa, who also synergizes quite nicely with the Hanging Gardens. Both food and happy faces are things that you want to have with Barbarossa. Now he's only missing some additional military actions. He finishes the Hanging Gardens, could still use the additional resource from Cleo this turn. So Cleo, I think, did a very nice job for him. And then he will use Barbarossa to go for an additional swordsman and place the medieval army tactic, interestingly. Interesting that he reveals this. I guess he wants to stay flexible with Barbarossa and the Hanging Gardens. I guess there's some potential to actually go for still 2 or maybe 3 knights and go really aggressive. Maybe didn't want to discard it or something. Still revealing this tactic to your opponents who didn't reveal any cavalry tactic yet. Looks a bit weird at first, but let's see if he will actually manage to make use of it. Wolf's Seeds, the event deck flips now. Dots with having Nostradamus is probably hoping now that HC squared won't seed, so that he will get full knowledge with Nostradamus. Wolf's opens the development of science. I guess he will go for Himeji Castle this turn, as no wonder yet has some strong iron production. Yes, indeed. Also suspect him taking the breakthrough, and then probably one of those, yeah, the frugality, the more efficient card with being low in civil action. And he then reveals the phalanx tactic. Now a knight's tactic got revealed anyway, so why not reveal one himself? HC squared will go for the iron, has collected a third Hippocrates token, and with that will go for Joan of Arc, goes for 1 upgrade, and instead of the second upgrade he will increase his population, but maybe if he doesn't have knowledge about rats or something, it could of course be the safer play here. He also builds a warrior, thanks to increasing his population, so increasing population, also making sure that he is not the weakest. Wolves, who has seeded half of the events, was not really concerned about getting stronger, which is a big indicator that he didn't seed any strength events himself. Now it's Dot's turn. I suspected he will switch to Nostradamus this turn. First of all, he seeds, opens the kidnap that was seeded by Wolves. Interestingly, builds an additional religion, but that will probably come soon into play with giving a discount to the monarchy. I suspect even this turn. He will finish the Acropolis, goes for the monarchy, goes for Nostradamus, and then takes the iron. Could have also gone for a Code of Laws even already this turn, maybe taken the Engineering Genius and then waited for one of those wonders. But he instead wants to have the last copy of Iron, and I guess he also has a Richland A in hand, and thanks to the Richland A will be able to go for 2 upgrades at the next turn. Kushantri will seed, maybe reveal a tactic to now keep an event in hand, and yeah, he opens the rebellion, maybe even seeded by him who has the Hanging Gardens, and both Wolves and HC squared will lose 2 civil actions, which is definitely a setback. So just the 2 players who are behind the standings now getting punished by the rebellion. Kishandri goes for the Code of Laws, is now at 5 civil actions. Might mean that he can't go for the Knights at the next turn, but still, of course, nice to have the Code of Laws. Now he has to commit even more heavily into Swordsman, so let's see if he is still planning to get into Knights, or if he is just going for an infantry tactic at some point. Wolves Seeds opens the Raiders. Wolves and HC Squared are the 2 weakest players. And then, yeah, he can just finish Dimitri Castle this turn. Had only 2 civil actions, which certainly hurts a bit. Maybe even the Great Wall could have been an interesting pick, going for 2 Strength Wonders with having already 2 infantry units. But at least he can get out of Corruption and increase his strength a bit with finishing Himeji here. HC Squared won't see it. He sees, of course, what is on top with Joan of Arc. He takes the Irrigation. Then Dot Seeds with Nostradamus opens the Dark Ages. Ooh, and there's quite a bit of science lost here. Only Kishandri manages to very nicely dodge that event. Could, of course, again be an indicator that he maybe has seeded that event into the deck. And yeah, especially Wolves now loses a lot of science that he generated with Confucius. So quite an influential event, and means that the players will be playing on relatively low science. Dot still has enough science left to go for Iron, can go for 2 upgrades if he wants to, but instead Raider wants to increase his population and go for the Great Wall. That may be some calculations on what he wants to do at his next turns, and found that he can't allow himself to get this quick second upgrade going. Or maybe he has knowledge about Reds, really wanted to have the Great Wall and just wanted to increase his population. And yeah, so a Great Wall, I think, a nice pick for him. Kishandri will go for the Irrigation, giving him more food for Barbarossa. He has 2 rich lands in hand, so he can go for those upgrades for free. And then he uses Barbarossa again to go for another Swordsman, takes the Urban Growth, doesn't go for the Knights, but at this point he's too heavily committed on infantry units. Wolves Seeds and opens another Confucius event. He this turn can go for Shishka, gets Knights for 1 civil action, so he gets some nice cards here. He's missing 1 food though to increase his population, so that's a bit awkward. Takes the Bread and Circuses and the Knights. Was there Pierre in the game? Yes, there was Pierre in the game with the internet. HC Squared Seeds and the raid is revealed. When we take a look at the next event deck, we can see that Green and Blue see the 2 events, so Wolves and Dots see the 2s, the other players 1 event. HC Squared will finish the Colosseum this turn, otherwise there would be the danger that he will lose it to the end of the age. He could also go for another Iron upgrade if he wants to. He will indeed do that, and then maybe still grab the Knights. Yes, he will go for the Knights, so has also a military tech now available, but reveals the Legion tactic for now. Maybe a tactic that Kishandri could copy, but I think there's also a fighting band already available to copy if he would like to go for that. Dots Seeds and a Good Harvest is revealed. Kishandri getting the most food out of that event. Dots will now go for 2 more Iron upgrades, takes the Alchemy, the Patriotism, and increases his population again. Kishandri Seeds and opens the Reds, so now the Reds are there. Ooh, and that's of course a bad timing for Kishandri. He just got the additional food out of the Good Harvest, could have now gone again for more Barbarossa activations, but now he loses 9 food. And Wolves and HC Squared also lose a bit of food. Dots, who had the knowledge with Nostradamus, prepared for the event, and only loses 1 food, so Nostradamus showing off a bit of strength here. Kishandri, now that he can't pop and maybe has struggles a bit how to spend the civil actions, goes for the Silk Road. He could have also gone for alchemy upgrades with the Urban Growth. I think that also could have been solid, but of course I won't argue against taking the Silk Road here. Builds 1 step, and will he play now the stockpile with the Silk Road? Will he go for this very nice move? Then he even would have enough food to again go for another Barbarossa activation. Yes, he will play the stockpile for 2 resources and 2 food, always great if you manage to pull that off with the Silk Road. And then he will use Barbarossa again. So now 10 strength, has no tactic completed, can maybe soon copy the Legion and go up to 14 strength, but then again also will miss out on some draws. Wolves offers the Naval Trade Agreement to HC Squared, wants to have the additional blue tokens. HC Squared accepts. With having lost some food to the Reds, Wolves can't use the Frugality now, so that's a bit annoying. And interestingly, he's actually going for a knight here, causing an uprising issue. Maybe he will disband now a warrior, still keeping the tactic with Shishka, and then going for Breton Circuses, I guess. Or, of course, he can go for the Theocracy, and that might also be interesting in this situation. Oh, he's going the really aggressive path here. He is actually destroying this lab in order to go for another knight. It's now at 15 strength with Jan Žižka, Himeji Castle, and the Theocracy. Let's see if he can pull some aggressions off soon. That's now getting interesting, but he had to sacrifice a lab, and that, of course, is a bit painful. So let's see if that works out for him, that sacrifice of the economy in order to go for the strength push. H2 starts, and HC squared will seed. Opens the new deposits, everyone gets 6 apart from Kushandri. HC squared will then start going for the irrigation. Goes for the knights, develops them with the Colosseum and builds one. Still getting 3 draws, thanks to... I guess he has the Colosseum, yes. Dot seeds. Opens the Crusades, Wolves getting at least already a bit of culture out of going for that much strength. HC squared loses a bit of culture, Nostradamus helping Dots to not be the weakest. He will finish the Great Wall thanks to the additional resource from the new deposits that's possible for him. And then he has 1 civil action left. I guess he might take the breakthrough. First of all, he will build some warriors, is now quite strong, and indeed he will go for the breakthrough and has, I think, a solid position. Scores a solid amount of culture with Nostradamus, nicely prepared for events, has some strong production, can maybe go for alchemies at the next turn off for something strong from H2 if there's something available. Kushandri this turn finishes the Silk Road. Let's see if he will disband a warrior in order to not have an uprising. Ooh, he's actually destroying a mine here. I guess he is maybe a bit in danger or afraid of a potential aggression from Wolves. And if he would disband a warrior, even if he would upgrade the other one, he would be 10 strength, would not get any draws, and the aggression from Wolves against him would be guaranteed. With Wolves going for that play, I think it's likely that he has at least 1 aggression. And if Kushandri now destroys the mine instead of any units, maybe gets a bit stronger, then it's a lot more likely that Wolves will actually go against HC squared, who had, of course, already some H2 draws, so it will be interesting to see if there will be a successful aggression happening. But, of course, destroying this mine also quite a bit painful. And Kushandri actually having his own tactic of fighting ban, goes for an upgrade, is now at 14 strength. But he doesn't get any draws, had to destroy a mine, so let's see how he will recover from that. At least he has the Silk Road. If he, for example, gets an H2 government form quickly, maybe with the Silk Road he can still transition into a nice position. Wolves doesn't play an aggression, instead he seeds, opens another Confucius event. And he's actually willing to go for the selective breeding here for 3 civil actions. Maybe wants to get some food production started quickly, which could allow him to even go for more strength. Also, he needs something to invest into, but for the moment he is sitting on a lot of resources. Slow in science, doesn't get a pop out next turn still. So I think he has some issues, but at least is still the strongest and somewhat threatening. And he's just using a civil action sufficiently, or I guess taking selective breeding for 3 is somewhat expensive, but I guess the alternative's also not that great. And like this, he's guaranteed to have something to invest into and to get some food production started quickly. HC squared seeds, he knows what is on top, is actually willing to just accept this border conflict, maybe didn't have a nice way around that, and will lose something while Wolves has now even more resources saved up. He will take the first copy of cannons, develops that copy of cannon. Let's see if he has drawn already a very early tactic for those cannons. No, he actually discards all of the H2 cards, so that's a bit of a speculative cannon, but of course just the 3 strength and being now a bit flexible for different tactics could be fine. I think he lost a lab to the border conflict. Let's quickly check that. Yes. Which hurts, because now the scientific breakthrough is revealed, which gives not really a lot of science. I think there was a lot more science lost by Dark Ages than what is now gained by the scientific breakthrough. Kushandri getting the most out of it, and that 3 science could make a big difference for him, because he was on 9 science if I remembered correctly. Now he's on 13, or I guess then the Confucius event was revealed he was on 10. Now he's on 13, and now actually he would have enough to go for a Conmon. Dots has already the Monarchy, probably won't take the Conmon, and that early Conmon could really help Kushandri. Dots goes for the Code of Laws, develops it with the Breakthrough. Goes for the Alchemy, goes for one upgrade and takes the Breakthrough. That looks just like a very solid turn. I think especially the Code of Laws, of course, very important to have, to not be stuck on 5 civil actions for too long. Kushandri indeed can now go for the Conmon. I think that's just something that he has to do. Then he guess he will increase his population or even do another Barbarossa activation to get out of corruption. Is now at 16 strength, just has a lot of swordsmen. I mean, imagine if he would have gotten the Great Wall. You did not know. Maybe he's still at the Silk Road at that point, but maybe Dots taking Great Wall was also a bit of a denial pick. I don't remember the situation exactly. And Kushandri goes for this Barbarossa activation and goes for an very interesting choice here. Actually goes for the Machu Picchu, but he knows that he has no iron available, so it's mainly for some additional food, which of course will synergize nicely with Barbarossa. And at least he's getting one additional resource production. He has the Engineering Genius, who knows when he will get a chance to take an H2 Wonder. But still, it feels a bit weird. Maybe they want the nicest alternatives for 3 civil actions. He could have maybe gone for Catherine or something. Will be interesting to see how that works out. Looks a bit weird for me at the first glance. Committing now to that, blockading the Wonder slot to go for Machu Picchu without iron. But some additional food without needing additional population and farms can still be fine, at least a bit of additional resource production. No, but I'm not sure how much I like this. He draws some H2 cards now, the Conmon also being important because of the additional military actions. Wolf Seeds, Dots and Kushandri both gain additional population. And Wolf's this turn goes for farm upgrades. He could have invested all of his civil actions to take the Ocean Liner, but I think that would be too expensive. Instead, he at least makes sure to not have 4 corruption, goes for 2 upgrades. And interestingly, he's taking the Louvre here. I guess he really urgently needs something to invest all of those resources, to not just have them lying around and causing corruption, but with going for the Louvre, of course, he again might maybe then have some corruption issues. Let's see how that will work out for him. He is, of course, now also blockading him from other wonders. But, I mean, with the Louvre, in addition to the culture production that he already has, and also being a bit safer maybe with Himeji, he could maybe run a little bit away with the culture. HC squared will go for Nobel. Interestingly, doesn't grab the Ocean Liner, but the additional science from Nobel also, of course, very important for him here. And investing all of his civil actions in the Ocean Liner also might have been a bit expensive. He will then rearrange Avorion to cannons. Will lose the Legion tactic for that. But he reveals the Napoleonic army tactic, which makes him now one of the 2 strongest. He then takes the patriotism. He could have actually gotten out of corruption by building a religion, but maybe didn't want to commit this worker there, especially with the team sports coming down the row, which there's maybe a chance that he gets it at the next turn. Dots is now the weakest. He has some knowledge with Nostradamus, and interestingly he doesn't see it, but let's see if he will actually get stronger. Maybe he also just doesn't have a fitting event to see it. And he will now go for the Ocean Liner. Yeah, I think he has to go for it. Was good for him that none of his opponents took it away. And I mean, Dots' position might be getting quite strong here. He has already the culture lead, solid economy, will now get the Ocean Liner on top of that. That looks quite strong for him. He will then also take Maria together with the Ocean Liner. So I think it's looking quite strong for him. And if he also wins the second 4-player game, he would have a really strong start into this group. Kushandri offers the international trade agreement to HC squared, gets some additional resource production, HC squared some additional food production. He this turn will build 2 stages of the Machu Picchu, and thanks to the Silk Road, he has actually just enough resources with the Engineering Genius to finish the Machu Picchu. Is now at least on 4 resource production and will generate even more food. Probably he will just take some yellow cards now, maybe also Catherine, let's see. And the team sports, of course, a Happy Face Lucian, and also with Pierre being in the game, that makes a lot of sense. There's even Darwin in the game as well. So 2 yellow cards with the Silk Road and a team sport seems like a good pickup. Wolf's Seeds opens the developed territory, and HC squared is able to win it for 5+. Has to send only a knight away. Wolves will increase his population 2 times, doesn't use the frugality for now, maybe that will cause him some corruption issues. He will build a knight, reveals the medieval army tactic, is now back the strongest, and then builds 2 stages of the Louvre to get out of corruption, can maybe finish it at the next turn. Then it's HC Squared's turn. He will go for the second copy of Conmon. Can't develop it immediately, so it is somewhat expensive. Wolves and Dots are both on H1 government farms. Kushandri has already the Conmon. I'm not sure if it was really necessary to grab it for that expensive here, especially Republic with the Colosseum also works quite nicely. Maybe he didn't have that much else to do. Maybe he had some hand space issues if he just takes some yellows. So I guess, I mean, he could have increased his population, maybe played patriotism, rebuilt some units, probably have some corruption, but at least getting more draws and then taking 2 yellow cards, still leaving himself with 1 hand space. At the first look, I probably would prefer a turn like that, but I guess he has the Conmon now in hand. It's more easily possible for him now to just develop it and then, for example, take an H2 Wonder for expensive, so that could be a reason to just grab the Conmon. And of course, Wolves with having Acropolis could also still go for the Conmon while still being on Theocracy, but he's also extremely low in science and has not a lot of urban buildings. HC Squared actually building 2 knights is already 22 strength now. Let's see if he can maybe pull off an aggression or a war soon. Dots seeds and opens the Reign of Terror. He's the weakest himself. He knew about it, but maybe also had no way around it. At least he has a free pop and that won't cause him any uprising issues. I suspect he will finish the Ocean Liner this turn. Maybe we'll go for Maria. Maybe then grab the strategy. He doesn't go for Maria yet, maybe still needs the strength of Nostradamus to defend himself, and he indeed will go for the strategy. He has only warriors, that's maybe one of his weaknesses, but thanks to the Great Wall now, the strategy, he's fine for now, and with Maria, especially if he gets Rifleman, can just very cheaply upgrade a bunch of warriors to Rifleman. Another colony is revealed, won by Kushandri, who wins it by a swordsman, gets some new draws, can cheaply rebuild with Barbarossa, so that looks strong for him. He goes for team spots this turn, can now maybe use this urban growth 1 with the Silk Road bonus before he risks losing it to the end of the age. Interestingly, builds then again another urban building with the 3rd lab, but he has a lot of population, and so when you have gone for the Machu Picchu, then of course now you should also try to make use out of the additional pop, which he does here. It gives him also 6 science instead of 5, meaning he is prepared to, for example, go for something like Cannon or Cavalryman, or also for something like Scientific Method if he wants to. And now with the remaining civil actions, he can just load up on a lot of yellow cards, which is quite strong for the Silk Road. So as I said earlier, if he gets an early government form, the Silk Road can just really bring him quite a lot of value here. He upgrades the warrior, takes reserves, urban growth, wave, and efficient upgrade. That's a lot of value with the Silk Road. Who has seeded at H2 event, by the way? Wait, whoop. That was seeded by Yellow, which is HC Squared. So let's see what he put in there. Wolves this turn, finishes the Louvre, can't take the Harvard College, which I think would be quite strong for him. Maybe he can do something with the journalisms. He will increase his population, again not using the frugality because of corruption issues. Goes for the bread and circuses, builds 1, and then builds another knight. Is now 22 strength, stays strong, but as soon as he loses Shishka, he will lose quite a bunch of strength. Produces now a lot of culture, but I'm not convinced yet if his position will be well equipped to survive H3 very well. At least he has Imechi, so let's see how it will be going. HC Squared tries an aggression against Dots, but he can defend himself. He can then this turn go for the Conmon. Goes for the Eiffel Tower, over the Harvard College interestingly, but the Happy Face soon will be relevant, and in contrast to going for the Harvard College, he can actually finish the Eiffel Tower immediately, which might get him out of corruption, so that could be a reason towards the Eiffel Tower. Also, I think he's the player who's a bit behind in culture right now, so I think understandable that he goes for the Eiffel Tower. If the Harvard College would have been on 1, I think I would still go for the Harvard College and finish it. But with not being able to finish it immediately and then maybe taking some corruption, I can understand that he wants to go for the Eiffel Tower here. And so in some sense, grabbing the Conmon for that expensive has worked for him, because he, if he would have now to pick it and develop it, he would not have enough civil actions to take and finish the Eiffel Tower. And especially if the Harvard College also would have been available for 1, that could have made a big difference. Now, if he would need to take the Conmon, I think it would still be fine to just develop it, take Harvard College, not finish it yet, finish it at the next turn, and have the yellow cards that he didn't take now, but now I think it worked out fine for him. but I think Eiffeltor being quite strong in the situation. Dot Seeds, another strength event that he gets hit by, seeded by HC squared, but with Wolves getting stronger, he is actually able to win it. Let's see what Dots pays to him. Pays 3 resources, probably something that Wolves doesn't need as much, but still a bit painful for Dots, of course, to lose those resources, but losing Science also would have been painful. He goes for Maria, gets some additional Science and Culture immediately with the Ocean Liner, takes the cannons, I think that's no surprise, develops the cannons also, plays the Patriotism and starts building one. He has no H2 card in hand, meaning he has no knowledge about any tactics that he can copy. I guess he has knowledge about the Napoleonic army, of course, so he maybe is hoping towards a copy of Cavalryman. Let's see if there are still some in there. 2 copies are still in there, so that could be something that he can hope towards, and also there are still both copies of Rifleman left. Yeah, but interesting that he's already willing to disband a warrior with having not that many draws. At the moment he would still be in danger of an aggression, so that I think this makes it that he will go for strategy now. He will do that indeed, is now relatively safe and also builds an additional religion. Interestingly. Kushantri will use the frugality with the Silk Road bonus, and with that has a free population. Still is a lot of food saved up for Barbarossa, but there's no H2 tech that he can invest his Barbarossa food into, because I think now going for some late Barbarossa activations to build 2 cannons or 2 cavalrymen or something would be extremely strong for him, but now maybe he has to wait for the next turn and to have a chance to go for that. He again uses Barbarossa for a swordsman that maybe was necessary to get out of corruption. Still is enough food to go for 2 more Barbarossa activations at the next turn, so he really has gone for a lot of activations. That just the thing that maybe makes it not as strong as usual is that he just went for swordsman, but still, he is now with all of those swordsmen again the strongest and takes the Harvard College, probably also the Engineering Genius, which he would actually be able to use for 5 resources on the Harvard College, and also of course Silk Road and Harvard College being a very fun combination, being able to take yellow cards and then play them immediately with the Silk Road bonus. He's actually willing to skip the coal for that, but I think there's still a second copy, but still an interesting choice, but could be right here. Now it's Wolf's turn. He seeds, opens the wealthy territory, won by Kushantri, who wins it for just a swordsman, so that I think worked out very well for him. And now he has quite a lot of resources. I mean, somehow his things are coming together here. Wolves goes for the Gremlin. I think he really needs more actions. And his lone science, I think destroying this lab earlier, has cost him now quite a lot of science, but of course he also was quite competitive in strength. Has also won some strength events, but if it was enough to make up for that lost lab is the question. And yeah, so I think the Gremlin a very reasonable choice. He might have some unhappy phase issues though, but there's still 2 copies of Organized Religion in the deck. And then he builds a step to at least have only 2 corruption. He had a lot of corruption this game, so he went for some early iron production, but struggled a bit to invest those, which is of course a bit of an issue with staying in 4 civil actions for that long. But he had now a lot of culture production, so he is running a bit of away with the culture as Himeji to maybe defend himself. HC squared opens another wealthy territory, this time the one from H2, and Kushantri has now used a lot of his defense cards, is not willing to bid too much, and at the end HC squared wins it again for just a knight, which I think is nice for him. He will increase his population 2 times. Goes for the drama, interestingly, has no synergy for it, however there is Marlene in the game, and at the moment he also doesn't know yet whether he gets a copy of Organized Religion if he doesn't take it for 3. And I guess he also needs to catch up in culture, and dramas are just relatively cheap in science and resources. So I guess it's still fine, even though he has no synergy for now. He then rebuilds the knights, goes back to 22 strength, has no chance to grab a copy of Rifleman yet. Those, and also I think the cavalrymen are quite late. Dots seeds, and the civil unrest is revealed, but no one has any unhappy workers. He will use Maria to get and use the Ocean Liner, gets some value out of Maria, builds an additional cannon, is now not the weakest any longer, upgrades a lab, is now for science production, and takes the journalism as well as the breakthrough. Quite expensive, but maybe he didn't need any of those other cards. Maybe the architecture could be interesting, but maybe he also wants to save up some science for an H3 government form. This turn will be the last for Kishantri to use Barbarossa, and he has now the chance to finally grab one of those H2 techs. So he goes for the cannons and can now again go for 2 Barbarossa activation. I think if he plays reserves for food, maybe even more, but he can use the Wave of Nationalism first of all. It's actually very close in the strength, so it's nice that he's just 1 strength behind and now can overtake his opponents, can at least go for 2 cannons. Will he go for another one? No, I guess he will finish the Harvard College instead, which is also very understandable and probably the better choice. He has now really gotten a lot of value out of Barbarossa. So far, his Machu Picchu plan without iron has worked out somewhat nicely. The additional actions are working well for him, and now he's at 7 science production, so I think his position is actually solid. Wolves seeds and opens the popularization of science. Very well timed for Kishantri just after finishing the Harvard College. Wolves this turn finishes the Kremlin, increases his population. The last turn I talked something about the organized religion, but of course he has already Bread and Circus also developed, which he might need some workers in now in order to not have any uprising issues soon, but I guess there's also beyond the game that he can hope towards. Builds another Bread and Circus, builds another warrior, will soon lose Jan Shishka, maybe is aiming towards Darwin. Is there any other leader left? No. So if he wants to go for an H2 leader, Darwin is his pick. Maybe he has also seeded Iconoclasm. HC squared seeds and the Ravages of Time are revealed. He has to lose the Colosseum. Wolves lose the Michi Castle. Oof, that is of course a bad wonder to lose. And then Dots will lose probably the Acropolis. Kishantri has to lose the Hanging Gardens, but actually in this situation it's not that bad because he has already a fine amount of Happy Face. I guess he will lose the population, so it might still end up being a bit bad. But maybe not as bad as it can be in other situations. HC squared will use the Frugality to get an additional pop out. Builds another drama. Could also potentially have thought about getting a lab in at some point, but wants to rather focus on a bit of culture production right now. Takes a copy of Ralphman and again builds an additional theater. Is now 12 culture production. Built up some culture production relatively quickly. I think 2 or 3 turns ago, maybe even 2, he was on 0 culture production. Then took and built the Eiffel Tower. Now went for those dramas and very quickly has now, as said, built up some culture production. The last turn in H2, Dot seeds the strategic territory is revealed, which is won by Wolves, sending an army away. Maybe he's still fishing for a tactic potentially. Now the event deck flips and every player is seeded 2 apart from red, so Kishantri, interestingly no event in the next event deck. Dots takes the Ralphman, I think an important tech for him so that he can just upgrade his warriors, which also makes it more easily possible for him to just use Maria's resources very nicely. He goes for 2 upgrades immediately, making him one of the 2 strongest, takes the selective breeding, the organized religion, so I think his position also still being perfectly solid, even though he will take famine this turn actually. But it might be fine to have famine for 1 turn in order to get all the things going that he needs to get going. Then it's Kishantri's turn. He's the strongest, so he might seed. Also H3 starts. He loses Barbarossa now. Wolves loses Jan Shishka. And there's an economic progress revealed, so Dots having famine costs him now a bit more. Has lost 8 culture in total. That's of course a bit unfortunate for him. Kishantri actually gets a fine amount of resources because I think he has one wealthy territory as an additional blue token from the Machu Picchu, so he gets some fine amount, and generally everyone I think gets a fine amount out of it. Kishantri goes for Darwin, meaning that Wolves actually has no H2 leader to work with for now, and Steve Jobs is not really the leader that he's looking for with low science and no upgraded labs. And for Kishantri, Darwin is quite nice, having 3 labs, being on team sports. He plays the reserves for food, interestingly, but that allows him to increase his population. And then will build an additional cannon, is now at 30 strength, and takes the air forces for cheaper thanks to Darwin. So I think that looks like a solid turn. And now that we are at the beginning of H3, it's time to take a look at the overview. And I think it will be an interesting H3. Kishantri I think did very well. Let's see if he will actually still go for coal. He would have the science and resources for it, thanks to the pact, and I also, of course, the little bit extra of Machu Picchu. He has some very fine resource production, has some very fine food production, thanks to the Machu Picchu, has already lots of units in the military. Let's see if he at some point gets a tactic for those. That, of course, would make his position even better, especially now with having air forces, but he's producing fine culture, has the best amount of actions, so his position actually looks very solid, still has the Silk Road for some additional value. Dot's position, however, also being very solid, a bit less culture production, but more culture saved up. Also Maria's, of course, a return, giving 1 culture and 1 science, so his economy also being very fine. He will get a population every turn with Ocean Liner, can now fix his famine and happy faces at his next turn, something that he has to do, so a bit inflexible at the next turn, but then he has a solid position, is also prepared for H3 tactics very nicely. Maria is still giving some value, so I think he has also a fine position. HC squared has some good culture production, but at the moment still needs to catch up a bit. Doesn't have the most science production, won't get the most population in, at least with how it's looking right now, but has a somewhat fine population income. If he goes for Rifleman, has a fine amount of strength, but then is maybe a bit low in science, so I would maybe evaluate his position a bit weaker than Dots and Kushandri's, but also certainly a position to work with. And then we have Wolves, who we have to see how he will survive in H3. He will now lose Dimitri Castle. That could be a very big setback for him, because potentially hiding behind it Wonder could save him. Now he will lose 2 strength, and the Himeji's ability is only on Knights and Warriors, so I think his position looks quite bad. Maybe he could hope towards getting Pierre or potentially Gandhi to hide behind, but maybe also Pierre to score some culture. He has, of course, for now the culture lead, still also some solid culture reduction, mostly out of his Wonders. And let's see if he manages to survive and maybe still build up something nice in H3. But now I have to go for my guess. And I would probably expect one of Dots or Kushandri to win, even though every player has still chances at this point. And yeah, I mean, Kushandri could still struggle a little bit with the resources, also if he has no tactic, while Dots, if he gets the right tactic, could have some really big potential, also with the Great Wall. So I think I will guess Dots as the winner, Kushandri the 2nd place. If that should happen, then yeah, it gets really tough for Wolves in HC squared in the standings, but my guess is Dots first, Kushandri 2nd, HC squared 3rd, and Wolves last. But I guess Wolves has really a big culture lead before HC squared, but with losing Himeji, he might just be quite a bit in danger. In the last game that we saw out of that group, he got hit by some big walls. Let's see if he can maybe avoid it this time. Yeah, so that's my guess. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wolves will start H3 with seeding an H2 event. A Politics of Strength is revealed. He will now also lose some draws. It's quite painful. And like in the last 3-player game, Wolves is in a vulnerable position, and immediately a Politics of Strength is revealed in H3. So Kushandri getting some additional draws here. And yeah, there are some important cards in the row. Air Forces, he really needs some science, but with being on 5 civil actions, yeah, he has some issues. Builds an arena here. Won't grab the Air Forces, but yeah, maybe the science is even more valuable. He is actually going for the Republic here. Can develop it at the next turn, but afterwards he would be very low in science and would also lose the military action and the strength, so I'm not sure if the Republic is the way to go, but I guess staying on 5 actions also is not really that great. He actually reveals the classic army tactic, interestingly. Maybe wants to use that free military action, but I guess he doesn't even draw any new cards anyway. Doesn't know if he gets modern infantry. It's an interesting choice. Maybe he needed to keep some other cards. HC squared seeds and opens the Iconoclasm. Ooh, as said, when Wolves just lost Jan Žižka, I thought maybe he could have seen that Iconoclasm. Now it is revealed at the perfect time. All of the opponents of Wolves lose their leader, and that of course is maybe a way for Wolves to come back into the game. Maybe Dots loses the most with losing Maria, but also Darwin for Kushandri could have done a lot of work. HC squared losing Nobel to the Iconoclasm is sometimes not that bad, but he's now very low in science, so that's a bit problematic. He had just enough saved up to go for Rifleman, can now go for some upgrades, making him stronger, building an additional lab to at least be at 2 science production. Maybe could have built one of those labs early instead of a drama to now not be that low in science. Dots offers a scientific cooperation to Kishandri. That of course will help them and could also help me in order to get a right guess at the end. And yeah, Dot's having a bit less science, less production, but he has a bunch of cheap techs in hand. 2 of them he needs to go for immediately, I guess, or not necessarily. Could also wait with the organized religion, maybe even go for pro sports if he wants to, or computers. Maybe computer Steve Jobs. Guess all of them now are trying to get a leader going quickly. Let's see if Dots will actually go for Steve Jobs. He goes for the religion for now. It looks like he isn't going for Steve Jobs for now. Goes for the selective breeding, goes for an upgrade here and there, builds the cannon, and reveals actually the fortifications tactic, which could give him some solid strength potential. Doesn't go for Steve Jobs, but at least takes the computers in hand. Not sure how nice a Steve Jobs turn could have worked. Maybe not that easily possible if he wants to take and elect Steve Jobs, maybe get some culture immediately and grab the computers, fix this famine. Maybe he could have not fixed his happy faces for now, but I guess there are also some other leaders like Bill Gates, Sid Meier that he can hope for. Ooh. Now, there is actually a war happening. Kishandri declaring a war against wolves. Something, him going for wars against wolves, is something that we have seen in the last 3-player games. He will go for the military theory, making him even more threatening. Can develop it for cheaper with the scientific cooperation. Plays the patriotism, taking it with the Harvard College, playing it with the Silk Road bonus, having lots of additional military actions. Now goes for the cavalryman. Can actually disband some units, rebuild some cavalryman, build a cannon, and has actually the mechanized army tactic, maybe drawn with the politics of strength, putting him at 55 strength in wolves. Oh my, he will now lose lots of yellow tokens. Oy. Let's see if maybe he will even resign, but with that big of a culture lead, I think you just can't resign, because there's always some hope left. Kishandri now also having lots of military actions, of course 2 he will lose, because those were gained by the patriotism, but nonetheless, even if Wolves gets Gandhi, he is in a position to go for war. He might already have a war culture with having had the politics of strength draws, so whoa. And now with Dots having lost Maria and Kishandri having the tactic, getting the dwarf, I now would want to swap, I guess, but now it's a swap, but now it's of course too late. Wolves tries to get some help from HC squared, but maybe HC squared is afraid of getting hit by something bad himself and doesn't want to grant Wolves the additional strength. Wolves will go for Gandhi, but as said, Kishandri has lots of military actions anyway, still could make him a bit safer. Maybe the best thing that he can hope for here, and yeah, he will, I guess, lose all of his yellow tokens. So that will be extremely bad for him. I don't think he can recover from that, to be honest. HC squared tries a peace treaty against Kishandri, nice try, but Kishandri will reject it. As long as HC squared doesn't have enough science for air forces, he is still a bit vulnerable. He takes the reserves, builds the rifleman, takes Chaplain, at least having a bit of additional happy faces and culture production. Better to maybe get that now instead of anything else later. Dots didn't go for Steve Jobs, might now have a chance to go for Sid Meier. Let's see if he will go for that. But also Bill Gates, but he also of course has to be a bit concerned about his military. He will go for Bill Gates, elects Bill Gates, goes for computers, is willing to stay a bit weaker for now. Let's see if he gets punished for that. Will actually go for an upgrade from warriors to rifleman. Maybe he's drawn a tactic. Otherwise, just going for more cannons would be better, but he didn't have enough resources to build a cannon after going for the upgrade. And Bill Gates, of course, could be quite strong. If he now doesn't get punished by an aggression immediately, maybe that will work out nicely for him. Kishandri, let's see if he will go for an aggression or even another war immediately. Oh, that of course hurts. All yellow tokens stolen from Wolves. Extremely big gain by Kishandri, and Kishandri punishes Dots for maybe a bit of a greedy line, which might still be the correct line by him. But now a computer and an organized religion gets destroyed. Kishandri gets 9 additional resources, takes the revolutionary idea, can play it immediately with the Silk Road bonus, develops the air forces, builds an air force, gets out of corruption, still gets 3 draws, is now at 70 strength, takes the urban growth and the mechanized agriculture. And I think now it's looking really good for him. Hurting maybe the player who had the second best position with Bill Gates being at 70 strength. Just, yeah, things are looking very solid for him now. But at the moment, Wolves still having the most culture. But having some other issues, I guess. Wolves this time gets the promise of military protection accepted, but this time actually just wants to have some additional culture. He destroys a lab, builds a religion, destroys a knight, builds another religion, just maximizes culture income, takes a rev idea, and he just has to pray by now. HC squared will steal some science from Wolves. At least it costs him a lot of military actions. So Wolves, at least has maybe a bit of comfort in that. HC squared and building an additional lab, taking the Hollywood, but I guess it's actually a fine wonder. Might need a wonder at some point. Dots cancels the scientific cooperation pact with Kushandri. Just takes the fast food chains, the engineering genius, builds another cannon, and he can't make himself completely safe anyway. Not taking the reserves, maybe a bit greedy, but I guess he also just needs to try to score some points at some point. But let's see if Kushandri will go for an aggression or a war against anyone. No war, which could be an indicator that he actually has no war. Maybe he's also just waiting, wanting to make the war bigger, but he could go for another air force with a war. So for me it looks like that he has no war available actually at this point, but he still has the chance to draw one, steals another 5 resources from Dots. Goes for Pierre. Yeah, I think things are looking very nicely for Kishandri here. Getting more culture now, the Olympic Games. Builds even another team sports, goes for the mechanized agriculture with the efficient upgrade, and then builds an additional air force, still gets enough draws, is now at 85 strength, and maybe doesn't get a nice wonder. Only the Manhattan Project is left, but yeah, if he draws a war, it looks is maybe already won, and even if he gets no war with Pierre and some decent impacts and some aggressions, he also could just win the game, I think. Wolves, tries his luck with the loss of Serenity, trying that no one can declare war on him. There's of course an interesting question which player he should try offering this pack to, because if that gets accepted, that of course could be a way for him back into the game. Maybe he could have offered it just directly to Kishandri, because I think he can hope towards, or he should be strong enough to also war some of the others, but on the other hand, he might still get the most culture out of Wolves. Could maybe hope that Kishandri hasn't drawn a war yet. Not sure if I would have offered it to HC squared. I think, to me, it feels like maybe offering it to Kishandri could have the biggest chance of success if Kishandri just sees a path for him where he just goes for wars against other players and now gets some safe culture income. Probably would also reject it though, so and maybe there were some reasons to offer it to HC squared. Of course, Wolves did put a lot more thoughts into that. He will play both revolutionary ideas. Will he go for the Republic? I think losing another Happy Face would be a bit painful. No, he will instead make him a bit stronger, which of course makes sense. Goes for the modern infantry, is not 32 strength. Has at least the Louvre resources still lying around. HC squares, tries his luck again, all trying to get some peace with some pacts, but it will be rejected. He takes the military build-up, destroys a lab, has enough science. The spy early on, I think, was extremely important for him. I didn't realize that or didn't point it out. Goes for another army and has enough science to go for air forces, so he should be relatively safe. And I guess with him having that possibility, Dots having potentially some H3 tactics. Now, I remembered their position weaker than they actually are from the military side, so I think Kishandri probably wouldn't have accepted the loss of Serenity, so Wolves probably made the right call, but I think regardless on what player he offers it to, maybe he doesn't have the biggest chances to get it accepted. Dots will upgrade a lab to computers, takes the air forces, takes the reserves, increases his population, has lots of unhappy workers at this point. And now there's a war happening. Kishandri goes against wolves, which I guess makes sense, even though there is of course the danger of wolves resigning now. But maybe Kishandri has even another war in his back pocket. He takes the endowment, plays it with the Silk Road bonus. He's really enjoying the Silk Road Harvard combination this game. Gets 7 additional culture before he will maybe steal some culture from the war. Takes the movies. Has already all of his strength built up, not even necessary for him to build more strength, just builds the movie, gets more culture production, takes the democracy, can maybe even revolt into that if he wants to, because he can't build a lot of culture anyway. Wolves doesn't resign. I guess at this point there's still the hope that Kishandri goes for a war against someone else. But I guess also that Wolves will lose that much culture that maybe a resignation could also be fine at this point. He will destroy some stuff, spends the Louvre tokens, and at least gets another outdated classic army tactic, being at 44 strength now. HC squared Seeds opens the historic territories, able to win it, but has to send a whole army. Looks a bit greedy, but let's see if he can set himself up in a way so that he is completely safe. Kishandri having only 4 resources saved up at least makes it that he has not that much, can't build really that much more strength, so if each C squared feels like he is safe and he has the military build up, for example, to rebuild, then maybe that is completely fine. He's actually destroying a lot here, but is now in a position to easily go for another army with air forces. Also has enough resources to still finish the Hollywood in case a blunder hits him. Dots opens the Cold War, Kishandri in HC squared getting some additional science. He has now even another population, goes for the engineering, builds in the computer, goes for the satellites, upgrades the warrior, takes the tanks. The next turn then can finish the fast food chains maybe. Let's see if Kishandri has another war, or if he will go for an aggression. First of all, he will still steal 46 culture from wolves. No war actually, instead an impact seeded. With the Olympic Games, Kishandri getting 8 additional food out of the prosperity. He takes the revolutionary idea and now doesn't even need to do a revolution in case he wants to go for the democracy this turn. Can again take it and play it with the Silk Road bonus. Goes for the democracy probably now. Can maybe even go for no, I guess he is missing 1 resource in order to go for team sports. Takes the computers, maybe he can upgrade with the efficient upgrade, maybe he has impact of science in or something. We take a look at the events. Every player apart from the blue one, which is Dots, has seeded an H2 event, while every player apart from the green one, which is Wolves, has seeded an impact. And Kishandri at this point, just ending the age. Probably he has also good chances if the game continues, but yeah, at this point, maybe just ending it also is completely fine for him. Then less unexpected things can happen. So H4 starts. Wolves plays the reserves for resources, goes for an upgrade, is now at 52 strength, maybe makes it that he at least can defend against an aggression from HC squared or something, even though there are the Olympic Games ongoing, so maybe he is somewhat safe from aggressions anyway. HC squared will offer an international tourism to Dots. Dots actually rejects it, so Dots would have gotten 3 additional culture with finishing the Hollywood and HC squared as well. Now that's an interesting rejection here. Why did Dots reject this pact? Was he maybe afraid that HC squared wouldn't finish the Hollywood? But no, now I guess that can't be it. And then with finishing the Hollywood, yeah, both of them just would have gotten 3 culture. Maybe he was afraid that the additional culture will be more relevant for HC squared for the impacts. For example, for impact of culture or something. Yeah, that looks weird, to be honest. That tourism rejection. No, I don't know what the reason is behind that. Maybe some impact preparation. But the impact of culture doesn't seem to make a difference in something like balance. There definitely doesn't make any difference. Dots Seeds opens the freedom of movement. That's of course nice now for Dots and Kishandri being able to use that event, while the others won't have a chance to use it. Dots moves the Rifleman into computers, builds an organized religion to at least get some more happy faces going, develops the satellites, which can be nice for some impacts, develops the tanks, maybe there could be impact of tech in there, and then he will finish the fast food chains for 21 points. I just wanted to check how much culture reduction Wolves has, if that would have made a difference. The international tourism, Wolves has 11, so I guess for both players it doesn't make a difference here. Dots, unfortunately, getting hit by the refugees. Kushantri being able to win that, Dots at least doesn't have to lose the population, which I guess isn't too bad for him anyway, but he lost the culture. Kushantri this turn goes for computers, goes for a very cheap upgrade with the efficient upgrade. I think he should have done. He had so many turns in a row where he has taken a yellow card and used it with the Silk Road bonus. I guess maybe he will take the Urban Growth and use it for maybe a religion or something. Then he then using it with the Silk Road bonus doesn't make any sense. But for style points, I think he should have taken this Urban Growth and used it with the Silk Road bonus. But of course, then the upgrade wouldn't have been possible. So yeah, of course the right move. But maybe a little bit missing a little bit of style points, but he has already collected a lot of them with pulling off that Silk Road Harvard move so many turns in a row and playing with the Machu Picchu without iron. So I think it will be a win for him in a stylish fashion. Alright, we are now before the final impacts. Oh, and I mean, Wolves is still somewhat in the game, even though I would be really surprised if he can catch up in the impacts. There's maybe one impact that would be really big for him. That's the impact of happiness, maybe also population. Dots wasn't really able to fix his unhappy face issues completely, so it's an impact like that could maybe help Wolves, but Dots of course also gets the Bill Gates bonus. Maybe with the right impacts like balance, science or something, Dots could even have some chances to catch up to HC squared, but I don't think anyone can catch up to Kushantri here. And the impacts are seeded here by those three were seeded by every player apart from Wolves, and then one by Red and Blue, so Dots and Kushantri have seeded an impact each additionally. So let's see what the final impacts will be. We have impact of variety, the religion immediately paying off. That's also an impact where Dots catches up some points to HC squared. I think the impacts will just punish Wolves too heavily here, even if there's an impact of happiness in there. Impact of colonies being quite a big one for HC squared. Wolves at least catching up 3 points to Dots. There's the impact of tech. It gives only 4 for HC squared, 16 for Dots, who is getting a bit closer, but still quite a gap to overcome. Then we have the impact of culture, which gives HC squared plus 10. So Wolves is actually coming a bit closer, but even if there's an impact of happiness now, it should not be enough. There is the impact of science, a good one for Dots against HC squared, but even with the Bill Gates bonus, it will not be enough to catch up to HC squared. Yeah, and with that, Kushantri having a very convincing win at the end. Great game by him. He made some unorthodox choices. Had a very nice Barbarossa game, even though he only went for a lot of swordsmen, but it still brought him some value. He won some colonies. Had a very strong Silk Road game. Starting it, he took it, played a stockpile immediately with the Silk Road, and then had this very nice Silk Road Harvard combination. He went for the Machu Picchu, a move that I criticized at the time, but showcasing that maybe thinking a bit out of the box and realizing that the additional food, especially also combined with Barbarossa, is still quite helpful. And I mean, when you are on bronze mines, every bit of additional resource production is also somewhat helpful. He didn't bother going into coals, just went into military. Of course, things also came somewhat nicely together. H3 starting, politics of strength being revealed, him getting PR, but and then him having the tactic and some wars, but nonetheless very nicely played by him and a deserved win at the end. And now I actually guessed that Dots might win this game. He at the end only finishes third. I guess Kushantri with Dots, I think at some parts of the game maybe being the biggest contender for him, targeted him with some aggressions, which maybe at the end made a difference that Dots didn't finish second at the end. I think those were situations where Kishandri could have also gone against HC squared. I'm not sure, maybe HC squared threatened to defend or something, but yeah, Dots was maybe the bigger rival with Bill Gates and then got in by aggressions, which maybe at the end also helped HC squared to come back. HC squared was quite a bit behind in culture, went for the Eiffel Tower, some dramas. Chaplin finished the Hollywood, managed to survive, threatened enough strength, and yeah, with that also has a nice finish now with the second place. While Wolves now for the second game in a row just got punished by the military. Yeah, I mean, it was a somewhat nice strength push going into Theocracy, having Shishka, Blasimici Castle, but being low in actions, low in science, not being able to spend the resources effectively is just something that will cause issues at some points often, and he also, I think, just didn't get enough out of the strength push. Maybe would have lost some strength events if he would have gone for something otherwise, and I think maybe he also would have had problems if he would have gone into a different direction at this turn. But at the end, in this game at least, it didn't work out well for him. And yeah, with that, this game is finished. And thanks to the very nice service of Wolves, we hopefully will now be able to take a look at the standings again after the third game being finished. And we can see with getting yet another win, Kishandri has now had a really strong start into those semifinals. He is only the third highest rated player in this group, but so far has had a really strong start. I think especially the game that we saw just now was just played very well by him with some unorthodox choices playing out very well at the end. He's now at 14 points. Let's see if he will be able to continue that and make it to the finals, which certainly would be a bit of a surprise considering the rating that he has. But Dots, even though he now finished third, has only 2 games finished, is still in a nice position, while HC squared and also especially Wolves, it will be a bit difficult for them now. Wolves really has to start winning some games now, otherwise it will be very difficult for them to make it to the finals. Alright, then I hope you enjoyed this game. Thank you for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.